Okay, so I'm going to go through a workflow from Revit to 3D Studio Max. And so actually I will just open up that last slide again. And so this is the workflow from Revit to 3ds Max for lighting and materials, but also possibly some modelling. So I'm really just using Revit mainly as a modeler, but also to get other orthographic representations, and I'll still do some of the materials in there, but the lighting I'll avoid. Now, once I've done that, I do need to come back to the things on the previous slide here and just in a bit more detail go through some of the advantages and disadvantages and basically the reasons you need to think about all these different kinds of programs when it comes to a 3D based workflow. But that's essentially what I'm going to demonstrate here. So once I think you've seen the basic workflows, it's easier to get an idea why you need to think about all those different programs. Right, so I'm going to just start by making a new file. I'm not going to go straight to a project. I'm going to make a new family initially in Revit. So really what I'm trying to demonstrate here is a fully linked workflow. And it's good to have things linked as much as you can. Now, I could have gone to a different option on the menu there. I'm going to go to conceptual mass here and I can choose metric mass. But if you haven't used that family type before, just so you know, probably a more straightforward way is to just choose conceptual mass from the sub-menu there and it'll take you right to that folder. Now, with these, metric adaptive component and metric mass look similar, but adaptive components are a lot more complicated. Now, I'll give you some, in fact, I've already put some videos on the P drive that you can get to if you want to do some exercises on these families, and they are excellent. But at first, if you haven't used either, I'd definitely be starting with the metric mass family and leave adaptive components for later. All right, so this is the, once it opens, this is the mass modeling interface. So it's a different modeling interface to what you get for other kinds of families in Revit. Most 3D family components are made with basic solid modeling tools like extrude, revolve, blend, and so on. This is a totally different system. Even though you can do all of those things, you can do a lot more. And the way you do those other things, extruding, revolving, blending, is quite different. So, since you probably haven't used this approach, maybe I'll just give you a quick demo with those things. If I use the, say, the rectangle tool there, just to make a shape on the ground, that'll do. Cancel, and now I'm going to come back and select it. Click and create form there with that rectangle selected is going to make an extrusion because I've selected a closed shape. Really all I can do with it is extrude it. Now I'm just going to do something extra this time before extruding it. I'm going to draw a line. So a line obviously is an open shape. So I'm going to select now the line and the rectangle. Notice how the rectangle is a connected object. So it's a bit different to the way you sketch other things in Revit. Okay, so I've selected both of those things using Control. Again, I've got this Create Form button now. Click, and it knows I want to make a revolve. So the line is the axis, and the rectangle is the shape, the profile. Now you can still go back and edit these things. Okay, so there's my elements, and I can get in and change any different part of that I need to. So just to give you a quick example, I can change the profile here. Okay, so all of those things are fully parametric. The axis, now it's going to go a bit crazy if I go too far here. Didn't like that form. Let's just do a simpler change. I'll bring that back, and then there we are. So, okay, so it's still fully parametric, but different to the way you model solids with the regular solid modeling tools in Revit. So, what if I have a couple of shapes? So I'm just going to make a few more. And now actually, sorry, before I do that, I'm just going to do it in a different view. So I'm going to go to a side view. Yeah, north will do. And I'm going to make a spline instead, just because splines tend to work better when you're doing a blend, which is what I'm basically what I'm trying to do, except it'll be better than a blend. I don't know if any of you remember the limitation with blends in Revit. There's really two limitations with a blend that I always found very frustrating. Okay, so the limitations are that the two shapes you use need to be in the same plane, also in parallel planes, so you can only bend between two parallel profiles. And then the other limitation is that, so I'm just trying to fix this shape a bit. The other limitation is that you can only blend two shapes. So unlike a lot of other programs, you'll see when we go to 3D Studio Max, you can blend as many shapes as you like. You can have 500 shapes, or maybe even, you don't need that many quite often, but you can have as many as you like and create a shape that's blended from one to the next, or using a range of different techniques to give you the final form. In Revit, you can do that as well. You've been able to for quite a while actually, but if you've only seen the regular blend tool, you might think that it won't let you do that, but it does. Okay, so that's what I'm trying to show you here. I'll do a simple blend initially, but then I'll show you a more interesting one. So that is a plane, and it's actually the plane that I've drawn my shape on. And now I'm going to copy the plane and the profile together. So I've got two shapes there. Now, again with control, first before I even do my blend, I better make them into different shapes. Well, it's a bit boring. May as well just have been an extrude. So, I'm just trying to make something that'll be interesting. I may even use this as the form for the building I'm going to show you, or the space I'm going to show you, but I was actually planning on doing something even simpler. Okay, so I've got two different shapes here. So with them both selected, create form, and it's going to give a blend between those two. And even that is something that a lot of CAD programs can struggle with, especially if you have something like this, where the profile or the plane that it's drawn on is at a different angle. Now, Revit can still blend those. A lot of other programs simply will fall over at this stage. But Revit, no problem, it can blend those two, and I can use that to make a building, believe it or not. And I'll show you in a minute how to do that. In fact, I don't mind that form. I'm tempted to keep it. But let's make it a bit more interesting. Okay, so I'm going to select my my shape and my plane again, and copy it the other way. And let's rotate it in a different way. And yeah, that should work. Okay, so I didn't get the arc. Oops, that was a bit silly on me. Oops, I did want that. That's why it's better to do it all in 3D. I keep trying to make it look different or look easier than it needs to. So there, that's better. I really prefer to work in an isometric view with programs that work generally in 3D, like Revit and other BIM programs. It can be a bit of a crutch if you're always going back to orthographic views to work. So try and get in the habit of working in isometric or other 3D views. Unfortunately in Revit you can't really work effectively in perspective views. You can do some things but not everything. but in isometric views you can do virtually everything. So a really good way of working. So now I'm just going to rotate this, and there we are. So I've got my 3 shapes, and so let's make the one at the end here different as well. And bring that out. Don't make it too crazy, but it just needs to be different, so I get sort of a sculptural form. You know, if you're working out a design, you would, you know, have a reason for all these different shapes being different. But I'm just trying to give you an example of a kind of an organic form. So 3 shapes selected, create form, and sorry, I didn't select everything properly. So that one, that one, that one, create form. There we are. Okay, so I've got there an organic form. Trust me, no other BIM program can do this. It just can't. Okay, it doesn't have the core programming to handle this sort of geometry. Now, you can actually make even more complex forms than this in 3D Studio Max, and Revit has the capability of importing those as NURBS surfaces. So if you want to make something that's really crazy, you can do it. Bring it into Max, bring it in from Max to Revit and model off it. And that's what I'm going to show you now. This can actually make a building, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. Make a building out of this. And I'm really more interested in the internal space, but first I've got to make the shell.
So in terms of making from AutoCAD is there like a certain level, or are we blocks or anything?
This is, yeah, okay, there is a level. I'm going to go to a side view. So in the elevation there, I've got 1 level. Yeah, oh, now don't worry about layers. Revit takes care of that for you. So, yeah, it manages that for you. If you've got, say, a wall, it's got an object style, and Revit has these things called object styles that basically replace layers. And so automatically, if it's a wall, it belongs to that object type or object style. So this is a mass. This is just an abstract form, and it's actually got its own object style. I'll show you here. So here, we've only got 2 object styles in this file, curtain panels and mass. But when I go to a project, which I'm going to do in a moment, you'll see there are dozens of object styles. Doors, windows are common ones.
So they're in like the abstract part of Revit?
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
Just really cool stuff and then it thinks about building.
That's it, yeah. So all I'm going to do now is make another rectangle. So it's cutting over or crossing over the part I want to take away, because I want it to be flat. I want it to be able to sit on the ground. I don't want a weird base like that. So I'm going to, again, create form, but this time I'm just going to go to the drop down and choose void form instead of solid form. So if you've done any solid modelling in Revit, probably familiar with voids and solids. So a void there probably isn't intersecting all the way across. But I want to show you a couple of things that you can do in Revit that you couldn't do in the past. So now I've just deselected it, and you can see it is cutting away part, but I want it to cut away more. Right, so I'm going to just select it. Now, it's handy, if you haven't used Revit very much, handy to always remember the option key is tab. So there, on the edge of this void, I don't get my void. Tab though, and enough times, it'll give me the object at the edge of that, and that's the void. So just pressing tab at any point on a surface will give you all the objects that are connected to that surface or object or edge. So you can see there are lots of different objects here. I'm moving, on that edge. Pressing tab each time, it'll give me a new object, and you can always keep an eye on the status bar here if you're not sure what it's showing you. So there you can see it's eventually going to give me the void element, or I could get it down here, anywhere that's being cut by that void. So then that void itself has subparts. So to make it easier to to show you those, I'm going to use an extra option here up the top, X-ray, and then pressing Tab on the surface. I actually want this surface here, so I'm going to go to the edge that is connecting that surface to the one below, and you can see eventually it's going to give me the profile. And now I can stretch this out. Now again, this feature here, we're going to be using this a lot more in 3D Studio Max, but I'll just point it out. It's called a gizmo. Have any of you seen it before or used it in other programs? Yeah, X, Y, and Z, exactly. You'll see it in AutoCAD, lots of other Autodesk programs. They're trying to get a bit of commonality between the tools in the different programs. Now, when it's red, green, and blue, that means it's X, Y, and Z. It won't always be. So I'll just make another selection over here. There we go. So I've got that face. Again, it's red, green, and blue, which means it's X, Y, Z. So I'm going to drag this out this way. And so now it's intersecting with the entire base of that object. I'm going to click to one side, and you can see now I've got a flat thing above the, or a flat base to this shape. So I might just check my height and make sure I've got enough space there. Yep, plenty. All right. So now that can have more detail added to it, and I will come back and show you that and give you maybe a better idea about some of the basic modelling tools. But what I'm going to do now is save this. It's a family, and I'll just save it here. So I'll call this loft mass. So now I'm going to make a project. New project. I know I've got the right template, so I'm just going to click OK. If you're wondering, the Australian template is generally the best, so default Aussie ENU or default Aussie ENU loaded. They're both good, but this one's fine. So I've got a new project file, and that's where you do the bulk of your work. But I want to get that mass into this file, so Control Tab will switch back to it. And now I can use loading the project and load it in. And you get this message about mass being turned on or show mass being turned on. That's fine, I want that, so I'm going to close this. And then there's an option here to place on face, and with that, it won't let you place it anywhere because there's no geometry in this scene yet. So if you're bringing it in with nothing to place it on, you've got to use place on work plane instead. And I'm just going to then place this inside my views. Okay, so now I'm going to just fix these elevations up so that they're outside the building again. So we get elevations as they should be, looking at the outside, not internal elevations. I'll do some of those, but afterwards. I'll keep those external elevations on the outside. Oh, so I'm just selecting them with a window and then using the arrow keys on the keyboard. Okay, so now if I go to those elevation views, you can see they're all looking from outside, none of them are cutting through. Section should be cutting through. It's a bit small, but you can kind of tell there that it is cutting. It's going to be clearer still if I fix it up by making the section box there, or the extent of the section, encompass the whole building. So it wasn't deep enough, but now it will be. In a shaded view, that'll be even clearer. But that's still a mass. It's not a building yet. It's not walls. It's not anything. It's a mass. Now, while I'm here, I'm just going to fix my levels up. So that's another thing to think about when you're starting your projects in a program like this. it's worth just coordinating everything in 3D. So my levels there were a fixed size, and you know, they try to do their best to give you a size that's going to be useful, but there's no way of knowing how big or small your building is until you start making it. So you have to then go and adjust the size of your levels to suit your particular project. And it's worth having a look through your views, just getting a familiarity with the what things look like, not just in the plan. It's too easy to just stay in the plan, draw away there, and not be thinking in 3D. And you know, BIM software, it's not just about 3D, but that definitely is a big part of it. So my levels there are looking pretty good in all the different views, and then I'm going to make some more levels, just a couple more. So on the Home tab, using the Level tool, I'm actually going to keep it fairly simple and make all my levels even, so 4 meters. Alright, so you might think, well, that's not going to be high enough. Don't worry. I'm doing that on purpose because I want to have something that I need to fix. Okay, so how do we make that into a building? I'm going to go to my 3D view with just the default 3D shortcut up on the ribbon there, on the quick access toolbar. And I'm going to, I suppose I'll switch to shaded view as well, just to make it a bit easier to see what's happening. And then I'm going to go to the Massing and Site tab, which gives you what's sometimes called the building maker. So when you're working from a mass element, these tools can speed up the process of creating, you know, these kinds of objects from a mass. Usually the first step is to select the mass itself, and then you'll get the mass floors option, and you can use any levels that you have. So you can see why I've got those levels. So now I've made floor plates from the levels that will cut through the building. There we go. And then, just orbiting, if you forget the shortcut, shift with the middle mouse button, or the wheel. Alright, so now I want to make some floors based on those floor plates. I'm just going to leave it on, so I will change it. I'll make it generic 300, maybe for the bottom. And then I'll finish that create floor, and then I'll go and make a different floor type for the one above. Now, don't worry, if you lose properties over here, it's fine just to create the floors, and then you can easily come back and select. I just left them on 150 anyway, so that's good. So I can just select each of these. I mean, I'll probably need a thicker floor, but for now I just want it to be fairly thin. Got a surrounding floor there. So they're all just picked off the face that it is created automatically. So now comes the tricky bit, getting the curvy surfaces that we've got wrapping around. So I'm going to use a roof for the main surface. So just using the roof tool there, and I can pick this main surface, and you can see it doesn't like me. I'm trying, but it's not letting me do it. That does happen. So if
when you made this shape originally, it had 3
profiles,
Yeah, where are they now?
they're back in the other file.
They don't come in.
They do, but I can't access them here. I have to go back into the other file to change them. But I'm going to do that in a moment. So, roof tool isn't giving me what I want. There are ways you can force it to, but I don't really want to. So instead, I'm going to use the wall tool. And it's fine. It's not really going to be any different structurally. I'm going to choose a simpler wall. So let's go for generic 200mm. And I can choose this surface now. There we go. Now, that wall is... It's actually not too bad, but it's pretty close to being cut through by the floors there. It's actually not as bad as I thought it would be. But I'll show you, there's a few other options I could have used. So I'm just going to select that wall and delete it. Right, so I'm going to do that again. Wall. Start with the same kind of wall, but I'm going to go and edit the type. Duplicate, and I'll call it 200 mil, concrete. Something. That's probably what this would have to be. Concrete with, let's say 30 mil. Let's do 50 mil cladding. Then I'm going to edit the structure and insert outside the core a new finish component, which I will give a more interesting material to. So let's give it roofing material. So I'll just go for roofing metal to begin with, and I won't worry about duplicating it. I'm just going to put a surface pattern right in there. So I'll go for herringbone. Render appearance. I suppose I'll choose something here as well that's going to be useful. And so we should have some decent metal materials here, but I know I'm going to have to do work on it in 3D Studio Max anyway, so I'm not going to be too fussy with this. So I'll just go for the plate metal there. But it's interesting to note, this is the mental array library. It's called the Autodesk library of materials that comes with a lot of their programs. So 3D Studio Max, Softimage, Maya, AutoCAD, and as you can see, Revit, all use that same library, or that you'll get that library with all of those programs. And so it's a really good way of tying these different programs together, because you can be sure when you take this material into one of those other programs, not only is it going to work there, but you can change it to one of these other materials that you might have been thinking about in Revit, and so you don't have to make the decision there, you can make it further down the track in 3D Studio. Okay, so I've got that basic render material set up, graphics good to go, so click OK, and I'll give that 50 mil thickness. And okay, so really important to note there that I've got this new component outside of the core boundaries. You'll see why that's essential in a second. So I've got this option, finish face exterior. I'm going to change it to core face exterior. And I'm going to pick that surface again. Fingers crossed, there we are. So that looks much better. So having a good look at it, you can see, there we are. So we've got that cladding outside of the floor completely. Right, so all of those things you can set up fairly easily when you're first establishing your main design constraints. And so I'll just want to save this file because I do have a few things running and I don't want it to crash. So again, I'm just going to call this loft building, say. Okay, so now I want to put some walls either end, and to make it work as a building, we need glazing, and so curtain system should be perfect for this. So I'm just going to use a regular curtain system, and all I'm going to do with it is put in some framing. So I'll just again duplicate this type and I'll call it framed. The mullions there just need to have simple mullions, so I'll just go for 30 mil square for all of these mullion types. So that's just going to save me going and manually placing all of these mullions. if I set it up in advance, much easier. Okay, so I'm going to choose that surface there, create system, and got a fairly basic curtain wall. You can do much more complex curtain walls than that, but this one will do for the time being. And so do another one over here. Again, create system. And there we are. So, you can take it much further. I'll just give you a few basic examples. If I go to the Massing and Site tab, I'm going to turn Show Mass off, so you'll just see the building components. In other words, the walls, windows, floors that I've made, not that mass element. So that means I can then go and develop it up. I could, if I can find flat areas of the wall, put windows in. They won't work on the really curved bits, but they will work on, I mean, they'll work anywhere, but they just wouldn't make sense on the bits that are curved too much. So I'm just going to use a basic window, and you can see that will work just fine because this is a wall. So it knows that windows belong in it, and it will happily accept them. Now you can see there, even that part of the wall is a bit too curved, so I'm going to have to spend a bit of time working out where my windows will work with it. But that's okay. I'll just leave them out of there for now, and later on I'll try and work out where they can fit. There definitely will be some parts where they'll fit. And I think it, oh, absolutely. You can make a new window family and put in a different frame, no problem. I just don't have one at the moment that's got a...
Do you have to insert what is a window into the wall, or could you just punch a hole in the wall?
Oh, sure. Yeah, you can definitely punch a hole in it. But when you put a window in, it makes the hole automatically. That's all. Yeah. But no, you can definitely do that. So I'm just going to go to an elevation view, and you can see the window there as well. Now this just makes it a bit easier for me to move that across because things are just going a bit slowly. So I'm simply using the arrow keys again there to move that. And yeah, look, it's tricky with these kinds of surfaces, finding somewhere that that does work. But I know, because I've made these forms plenty of times, eventually I'd be able to get something that that would make sense. So I know around here it eventually will find a place where it'll sit pretty comfortably. Yeah, I don't want to spend all night doing windows, but I just wanted to show you it's not hard to put those things in. Depends on the complexity of the model, obviously, how much working out you've got to do, but that's just down to your design.
How did you actually just punch a hole in there?
Oh, okay, so one way would be to make a void, just like the one I showed you in the mass family. Okay, so here I would use something like an in-place family. Now let's just see what's happening there. So notice how the edge comes through there. Don't worry too much about that because that should still be set back. Yeah, okay, so I'll just make an opening. Now, there's a couple of ways you can think about the workflow. I could do it here. So I could make a void in the project as part of an in-place family, model in place, make a void, and then I can use that void to cut a hole in the wall. But is that the best way to do it? I'd say it's probably not, because remember I've used the mass to generate my wall. I want to keep it tied to the mass. So it's better to do what you can. If you generate something from a mass element or something similar, do what you can with it to make your changes. So there, another issue is that I have a, I've got a roof, or the part above the floor here, way too low. So I'll do both those things. I'll put a hole in, and I'll bring the roof up as well. So I'm just going to switch back to the mass family with Control Tab. Eventually I'll get there. Got a few views open, but that's alright. There's the mass. So, what should I do first? I'll do the changes to the profile. So it can help here to have some reference planes to help work things out. So in the Home tab, I'm going to draw reference plane. Now plane is the button, not reference. I know it's confusing, but plane makes reference planes. Reference makes reference lines. Okay, so I'm just going to make a reference plane here that I know is 4 meters because they're the height. That's the height of my levels. So it's using the same reference, and I'm going to copy it with the multiple option on, so I can just copy it like you would in AutoCAD multiple times. And now, did I even have that many? I thought only. Sorry, better check. So I'm getting a bit absent-minded, but so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. That's right. So again, back into the family, 1, 2, 3. Yes, I don't need this one. Okay, so in different views, I can get a better idea where those profiles are, and a good way of making them visible is if you select the element. Again, you can use X-ray. Now that's giving me the surface, not the whole element. So I'm going to use Tab and make sure it gives me the original element. So notice how on the status bar here, it starts by giving me the join geometry, shape handle, tab, again, join geometry, there's my original element. X-ray, and I'm back now to the profiles. So I'm going to use tab again there and get the spline that was part of one of those profiles, and it's just as I've just made it. I can use the grips here to adjust that. Now, sorry, I accidentally selected something else. Got to still be careful. So, tab, and then X-rays on still, so I can use tab now. And there's my spline. And so really important here that I don't click on something else that's highlighted. Sometimes again it can help to use tab here to make sure you're selecting the right thing. So you can see there the vertex is highlighted, and I can move that. Notice how the reference planes are also visible in 3D, and that's something that you don't get in a project file or in many family files. So lots of little things are different in this modelling interface. So I can see quite clearly there where this needs to be adjusted to give me more headroom on that level. Okay, so that's probably all I want to do there. Turn X-ray off, and now I'll add the extra void in. So say if I want to make a hole over here, and I might need that to make an entry. I probably need some sort of flat surface for doors and things like that. Or actually maybe it makes more sense on this side, just looking at it, so I'll do it there. So I'm going to make a rectangle, and now here, again, I've still got draw on face selected. It's a bit like the option you have when you're placing a mass. So I'm going to go to draw on work plane instead, because the work plane should be parallel to the ground. Now it's actually not, so it's picked up a different one. So I'm going to use set. And these are tools, it might seem like a lot of tools to take in, but if you've worked with families before in Revit, you've probably used a lot of these tools. I will show you where there's a lot of exercises on all aspects of Revit, including modelling families, if these tools seem new to you. So I'm going to pick the surface there on the ground, which is the only level in this project. In this family. It's not a project. Right, so it's highlighted it for me. Now I can draw a rectangle again, and I know it's going to be on the ground. little bit big maybe. So I'm going to select the rectangle by clicking on it. Now, the secret to selecting parts of a shape is to click twice. And this again is very different to Revit, to the rest of Revit. So it's only in this mass modeling tool that you have all these more advanced drawing tools and techniques. So that there is the rectangle that knows what it is. It knows its connected shape. So when you select one of the lines, it knows it's joined to these other three. But if you just want one of them, simply click on that line again, and now you can move it by itself. But again, notice the other lines automatically adjust so that they're still joined at the end. Right, now the one over here, it's a bit hard to see, so I'm just going to go to wireframe, and again, should be able to select that. I don't want it to go that far into the building, so I'm just going to get that right. Okay, so now I've got the rectangle, the right shape, and then I'll go void form, and again adjust the height of this box to suit. And here, because I've got those reference planes now, it's really easy to tie that in with the levels that I've got in my project. Now, it should snap to the plane eventually. There we go. You can see it is, but always you can type in dimension as well. So that's a simple way, or not a simple way, but that's probably the best way of making a hole in the wall. But you know, it is possible to do it directly in the project. But I'll show you all those different techniques later as we go through different parts of the program. Okay, now I'm just going to save this file. Again, good practice in Revit. Save, save, save as often as you can, because the real complaint I have with Revit is that it's not, it doesn't automatically save. There's no auto save. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So as long as you click yes, but you know, sometimes you might have been doing things, especially if you've left it to render for a long time and then come back and done something, or when you're working really quickly, you can still get a lot of stuff done in half an hour, and then it crashes. And in AutoCAD, you know, it saves every 10 minutes. For the Studio Max, you can set it to save that often as well. And so I'm just used to having saves there. If it crashes, I know I can always get it back, except in Revit, when, you know, if you haven't saved, you're in trouble. So, yep. No, but you just have to remember, that's all. The reminders do come up, but honestly, I hardly ever see them because I've just always Control S. Yeah. No, look, as long as you remember, that's the main thing. But you know, just watch out for MicroStation people. They don't need to save; it saves for them, and it's really hard to train them to save. So, if you missed what I did there, I just clicked Load into Family, which is a button you'll get in any family file, and I've got the option here to override. If you're not sure which one to use, generally it's best to use the second option there. In this case, it wouldn't make any difference. Okay, so in my 3D view, you can see nothing's changed. I'm going to go to my Massing and Site tab and show mass, and you'll see there that the mass has changed. It's maybe not totally obvious, but you can see here how it's bigger than the walls, and also you can see the part that I cut away from it. But the walls and other things haven't taken on the change. So you need to let it know, and it's set up this way for a reason, because you don't always want the changes to come through automatically. You might only want some things to change. Okay, but it is still a linked workflow. So I can use the tab key here, get my wall, and anything that's changed, you'll get this update to face option. So now my wall will keep this window, but it'll now reflect the changes I've made to the mass, including that part that I took away. So same with the other things. So the curtain wall, again, update to face. And then the other one, same thing. Probably hasn't changed all that much, but I'll update it anyway. So,
Because when you're looking for a doorway, it looks like it's solid.
oh yeah, so that's because the mass is there. So if I turn show mass off, it'll just show the wall. So you can see.
So the mass is solid but
Exactly, yeah. And you make your elements from different parts of the mass, different surfaces or other parts of it. So I could put a wall in there based on the mass. And it's probably a handy thing to have actually. So I can just go to the wall tool again now and pick those planes, and I'll just use a different kind of wall though. In fact, probably curtain wall might be better for that one. So I'll just use it for the sides. Yeah, here. And so it's just thinking. There we go. Here and here. Do solid walls, and then
So I've got my major project doing from AutoCAD. Is it easily put into it?
kind of. Yeah, it's got import tools, but you've got to remember BIM software works in a totally different way to traditional CAD software. BIM software is still CAD software, but it's a different kind of CAD software. So is it mainly 2D that you've done in AutoCAD? Okay, so then you can import into different views, and I'll actually go through some workflows you can use for that, because when you import something from AutoCAD, you actually have tools in Revit, mainly for the views. So I'll just cancel this, and I'll just show you. So this view here, just an ordinary view, going into the graphics settings, it's actually got a section which actually won't come up until I've imported a DWG file. But once you do, you get all the layers and all the settings for your layers in Revit. So the layers just get imported as layers, and you know, lots of things you can even work with as lines and other things that you use in AutoCAD. Yeah, because it's all Autodesk, and they own the rights to the DWG format, so they've got full access to bring that into Revit. Anyhow, here I just put another wall on now, just to show you a different approach to making a curtain wall. I use a different kind here, one that's set up slightly differently, because it should work on that pretty easily. So, right, so that'll do for my exterior shell. So I'm going to turn show mass off, and again you can see the walls and other things without the actual massing there getting in the way. Okay, so I won't bore you with putting doors and windows doors and other things into the curtain wall, but that's all easily achievable, and it'll again be tied to the mass. What I will show you though is how to now get some interior work set up. So I'm going to put a grid in there, and you can see because of the orientation of the building, it probably makes sense to have that grid at an angle that matches the building. I mean, I don't know, I definitely want to be talking to my engineer about the logic of this, but I don't see why it wouldn't work. So let's try, say, 4 to begin with. Right, so I'm just going to do use an array to get my grid spacing. I'll go for 12 meters. It should be okay. Yeah, that should work pretty well. And yeah, 4's working pretty well there. And then I'll do another grid going the other way. Yep, and then again using the array tool. 10 meters pretty well there. Great thing with the array tool in Revit is that it's fully parametric. So 10 metres actually isn't too bad, but maybe I want the grid to line up with this curtain wall. So you'll see if I move that over, and I'll just do that almost by eye, that's actually lined up pretty well. Notice how the other grid's spacing adjusted automatically. You can change the number, all those other things. So fully parametric arrays. But again, remember, this is still all tied back to my mass element in the other file. So I'm going to use one last tool that you may or may not have seen. When you're working with the structural columns in Revit, it gives you an option that you don't get with architectural columns. At grids, and then I'm just going to make a window over everything. It'll only look for grids, and I'll finish that and just accept the default columns. Now they're pretty awful columns, they're I-beam, so I'm actually going to select all of those and change them to something a bit nicer. So in the structural folder, not in the columns folder, you'll find the structural columns. So I'm just going to go for round concrete. $300's fine. And while I'm at it, I'll get the top offset to be my highest level. So my top level, not my top offset. Top level to be my highest level. And so you can see there they're going up to that floor. I can't attach them to this roof stroke wall because it's not the right kind of object, so I'd have to use a different approach to bring those up. And here you can see there's an issue with that column, but I probably don't need it, so I'll just delete it, or I can even take it down to below. So that'll work. Oh, absolutely. Yep, sure. Yeah, so I'll just show you that. So I just want to fix, in fact, see how this floor didn't get updated? Now, that's an example of why sometimes you don't want things to update automatically, because there, I actually don't mind that, having that void. So I'm going to leave that, and it's going to work pretty well. But say, yeah, this column here, I might want that to come through to the roof now. So I've tied it to the level, but I can then put in a top offset. Now I need to work out what the height is to the roof, because I mean, if it was a roof, I could just attach it, but because it's a wall, I've got to do it a different way. So that's all right. I'll just put in a distance here, 3 meters above, and that's actually not far off. But a bit of trial and error, and I'll be able to get that spot on. So now I'm going to go to, I think level 2 is going to work the best for my views. Yeah, so I'm going to make a camera view looking through this space. So through this way or something. Yeah. There we are. So shaded mode, sort of starting to look interesting. It had a lot more detail afterwards, obviously, but one thing I might do here just to make this look a bit more presentable is bring all those columns up that are outside of the void, so or they're inside that cutout. So again, top offset there, 3000. They're going through the roof, but I'll live with it because I want to get an interior view done. Yeah, it would be hard to bring those down. Again, if it was a roof, this would be even easier, but again, using a roof there has its own problems. Okay, so back to my camera view. And I'm just going to adjust the view slightly using the steering wheel. So if you haven't used this tool, I know a lot of people avoid it because it can seem a bit gimmicky. But it's actually really useful in Revit for adjusting your camera views. Even in 3D Studio Max, it's not that bad. Now, first I'm just going to bring out my field of view a bit, and then using the steering wheel, I'll use the look option there to bring it around. So it's looking more at the glass, and maybe I'll walk forward. I'm probably standing a bit too far back from the curtain wall, so I can walk it forward a bit. And
You always insert a camera in plan.
generally, yeah, that's probably the best way. You can do it in an elevation, but yeah, better in plan usually. Okay, so just add a little bit of detail in here. Now I can go into, say, the level 3. So I've got that floor there, and I'll make a say a railing on that edge there. Now you can always try pick edges, and you can see there, because of the complexity of the shape, it's having trouble getting that. So instead I'm just going to draw my path over the shape there. It should be just fine. Okay, so I'm using arcs here, and it's generally best, if you can, to use arcs for things like this. Sometimes it's the only way. Yeah, I am doing it fairly roughly just to get it done quickly, but normally it'd probably take a bit more time. Let's bring this back. Do a new one. Now, obviously, I can go and add more to it than this, but I think with the camera view I've got, that's all I'll see. So I'll just leave it there for now. Finish that and change it to slightly better railing. I'll get some from the library afterwards. So there we are, I can see that up there. Internal walls I can put into this view as well, so I'll just do a couple of quick ones. So using I'll just use a basic wall type, so stud, steel 90 or something. And so I just want very basic interior layout here, and I'll just make it slightly interesting. So that's fine. And I'll get some doors in there. Again, just using the ones out of the library. So nothing too special there. But again, all of this in my 3D view is going to come up now. And maybe some very quick furniture. So component, again, load family, and I'll just get some furniture there. So it should have some office furniture here. That's not too bad. In fact, sorry, I want the furniture systems, and so probably these conference tables. I'm just looking for one that's reasonable. That's okay. And again, always remember, most of these objects have multiple types. Now that one only has one type. I'll live with it. So I'll just put, let's just put a few tables in here to make the space look a bit more full, and get some other furniture from the library. So in fact, that cabinet that I had there is probably all right. Now. Yeah, well, it's a family, so it'll have parameters for, in this case, it's got parameters for the height. So I can duplicate that and give it a new name. So I'll just call it larger, or just large. And so I'll increase the length there to, let's say, let's go for double, 2 meters, should be all right. And I'll bring the height up as well and make that, say, 1500 or something. Oh, yeah, 20,000, okay. Well, it should cope with it. But I'll try bringing it back before getting out of here. There we go. So it's made it bigger. So it's not just scaling it, it's changing specific parameters. Okay. Yeah, it should have. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
So does it just change it to the scale?
Yeah, so it would divide it up evenly according to the new height, but the shelf thickness would stay the same. So they'd still be 20 mil, but the space in between them would be different. Okay, now I think it's facing the wrong way. I'll just have to have a look at it. A bit closer, and oh no, that's the right way. Yeah, that's okay. And maybe some people wouldn't hurt. Oh no, I'll leave the people out because they'll have a problem when they come into Max. So yeah, that might do it for now. I'll bring it into Max now. So I'm going to save the file. And then I'm going to use the format that only Revit gives you. Other programs need to use the DWG format, and this is one of the things where Autodesk are a bit nasty. They don't give out the rights to use some of their formats. Only programs in their club, in other words, programs that they make, have access to these formats. So, DWG is a format that they have let other people use for decades, and it's actually one of the ways they've become dominant, because they do allow other people to use their formats. But FBX is another one of theirs. It's a bit more advanced than DWG. They don't let other people use it, so it's got to be an Autodesk program. Now, sorry, before I do this though, that's the format I'm going to use, but I'm going to show you that I can turn shadows on here and see if I've got light coming through. Now, notice how I don't. I should be able to see clear shadows and areas lit by the sun. So I'm going to go into my sun settings, graphic display options, browse, and make sure it's set to Australia, so we get sun coming from the north. And I don't want a ground plane, and I'm happy with that date and time. That should work pretty well, actually. Yeah, so I'm getting a bit of sun coming in there. Maybe just to make it more apparent, I'm going to go for an earlier time. There we are. So I'm getting a bit more direct light in there. Maybe I can even, if it's winter, get away with it being a little bit earlier. There we are. So that should get some nice light coming in. And you see why that's important in a moment when I go into Max, into 3 Studio Max. So now I'll go back and export FBX. And I'm just going to leave the default name. Okay, now I've got 3D Studio Max open already. I'm just going to reset. So yeah, it's just a rendering example. I was showing some people how to do water. Okay, so now I'm going to, instead of import, I'm going to use references and then the file link manager.
So you say that as an MP3 text?
Yeah. And then here, got to be on attach, and I can click on file, and find the file. Now, I'm just going to browse to it. There we are. So there's my FBX file, and you can't see, I'm just going to click open there. And yeah, so then I'm going to use, we're going to use combine by material. Right, so that's it. I'm going to attach this file. Can take a minute, especially with a complex surface like that. Yeah, it looks very similar. Yeah, Mayo and Max are really converging a lot. Sometimes I wonder why they have two programs. Okay, so in my perspective view there, I'm going to right click on the perspective label, and you'll see if I go to cameras, it's actually got a camera with the same name as the view I exported from in Revit. Oh, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, so whatever you have in Revit. And so I've actually got my display unit in Max as well set to millimeters. So I'm just going to change the display here so you can see the lights a bit better. I'm going to turn on hardware shading and also make sure it's illuminated with the scene lights and has shadows turned on. And so you can see there, it might be maybe hard to see clearly, but there is some light there, and I'm going to go into my rendering options and use the exposure control to adjust that. So I don't know if you've done renders recently with Revit, but if you have, you'd remember the exposure options. So it's very similar in Max. Okay, so it's very bright, that one. I'm just going to turn that down. There we are. So some of the materials will come through okay, others I'll need to tweak, but I'll just show you. This is without doing anything. This is just basically clicking render. Now I'm getting an error there, and that's the material that's got a problem. But even without doing that, you can see lots of things have come across. So the sunlight, for example, the direction is based on what I had in Revit. The materials, those are things you won't get with the DWG format. Now, also, it's not hard here to check those materials. So I'm going to go into the material editor on the main toolbar there, that sphere with the checker on it. We're going to be using these things a lot, obviously. So I'm going pretty quickly now, but I'm going to go right through all of these things. You've got the these preset materials. I don't want any of those. I'm going to go and get materials from the scene. Now, I'll just show you. There probably won't be many because it's a pretty basic scene at the moment, but let's have a look. Oh, there's a few. Okay, so I've got the sky that's come from Max. Okay, just close this. The anodized black. Now let's see what that's being used by. I'll find out. So basically I'm just going to bring all of these materials. You can see a lot of them aren't coming up properly in here, but many are. So that timber material, on the other hand, is working. Okay, so that's actually working pretty well. That's come from Revit. I know it looks small, but I'll show you the image it's based on. So it just comes straight from from Revit, and I've got to find another one, but why isn't it highlighting that? Some issues here with my path, but I'll come back to that. So anyhow, that image there. Oh, sorry, I'm in the wrong place. That's why. So I'll just show you that now. There we are. So that image there is from a material library that is set up in Revit. It's come across straight into Max without me doing anything. Okay, so that material's fine. I might have to change the scale, but it's otherwise probably okay. Now I've got a few that are quite similar, but I'll bring them all across anyway. So you can see these are all Revit materials, but they come straight into Max. Remember, everything's linked. It's not just an import, so I can go back and do things in Revit still, and also make changes here. But I can bring those changes into Revit and it'll keep the changes that I've made here. Now, the contour shaders, don't worry about them. So then grabbing these others. And I'm going to need more sample slots, so just right clicking here, you can change the number of sample windows. And I'll just keep grabbing those. So generic was the last one I brought across. So I've got just a few more. Okay, so that plate material had some problems too. That's got to be fixed. It's fairly easy to see the ones that have a problem. So yes, it's telling me there's a problem, I know. Okay, so just a few more to go. So it's surprising how much work, you can see from this, how much work is done for you automatically. I didn't make very many objects back in Revit, but automatically all of these materials were assigned somewhere to something without me having to do anything. If in the old days you were modelling this in 3D in AutoCAD, you have to go through and assign every single one of those materials. It would take days. Probably, or not days, but maybe a day to get all this organised properly. But there's still tweaking you need to do, even with programs like this. So, with the, firstly, the ones that have got a problem. Now, anodized black, that's actually not too bad, but this one here, oh, that's just another black paint, but that one shouldn't be black. So, still, it's not as bad as I thought it was. So I'm just going to do use another tool. Using the display here, I can change it to wireframe. And so you can see there the edges of my object. And I'm just going to make sure I've got the wall there. That's it. And I'll zoom now. So I'm just going to fix my window up so that in the recording you can see the whole thing, and let's make sure, yep, that's the inside. So I can fix the material up that it's using, but it's much quicker to simply replace it with one that I make here, and that's what I'm going to do. So let's just make a colour. So I'm just going to make a sort of an off-white. That'll do. And I'll leave it fairly shiny, just make it a bit less reflective. So I'll just go for, say, a pearl finish. That's probably alright. And so I'm going to assign that now to this surface, make sure it's the right one. Yeah, now, sorry, this menu just is disappearing on me, but so I'm just isolating that. So there we are. So that's, now, sorry, I think it's actually the outside. So I'm going to, no, that's okay. Let's just see. No, that is the inside. So it just looks funny in here, but it is the inside. So I'm going to just make sure that material's assigned. And I'm going to change one render setting. and this is something we'll look at later on when we get into indirect illumination, something called global illumination. And then render again, and again there's an issue with some of the shaders, but you can see there that I've got a lot more light coming into this space, partly because of the material, but also the that extra indirect illumination. Now, the exposure maybe is too much now. It's hard to know that until we've got that amount of light coming in, but I'll just quickly do a adjustment to the exposure. I better finish recording in a second so you've got a chance to get this, but oops, sorry. There we are. So, no, that's probably pretty good. So 11. No. I mean, there are dialog boxes like that, but most of it is instant and parametric. Yeah. Okay, so without too much work, I've got this working now in 3D Studio Max. And I can continue rendering and working away in here with materials and lighting and other things. But I can go all the way back to that family that I started with, make changes, and all of those changes are going to link through and flow through all the way into this program. Okay, so that's the idea behind a linked workflow, using different techniques to go from CAD software to 3D programs, and then later on you'll see we're going into other programs as well. But you just want to plan out the approach you're going to use instead of just working it out as you get there. You really want to have it planned out and worked out. Yep. But I've got this video. I'll just stop it now so that you get a chance to get it.